Welcome to Unlimited Parenting. I'm Allison, and with me today is, of course, my partner in crime, Melissa Vian. And
I got a last name today.
You got a last name. Frequently, I don't give you a last name because I don't want people stalking you on Facebook.
Well, I'm not on there anymore, so good luck.
Today is a very special episode, and I know I say that about all the episodes, but I really like this one. Not that I don't like the other ones. Oh, God. We are doing a deep dive into the 2025 Idaho, with some federal sprinkled in, legislative session. It was a whirlwind. It was 12 weeks, give or take a week. We've already determined that I'm not good at math.
It was a long time.
It was very long. It was too long. And I think, quite honestly, that the congressmen would agree with us that it was too long. We all agree.
Yeah, I bet. I was going to say that might be something we agree on.
That might be it. That might be the line.
That might be it.
Full of bills that directly affect education, healthcare, disability services, family choice. And this is probably a good time to mention that there are a lot of bills that were covered this session that we're not going to get to. There was like 400, 500 in the House. And then there were Senate bills. There's some on housing. There's some on grocery credits. We're not going to cover those today, though.
But what I hear you saying is we are going to cover what maybe affected the families which we serve.
Listen, if it impacted me, I'm going to talk about it.
Cool. Sounds good. I just have a request.
Please. This is not TRL Live.
It kind of is. Wait, can you put in a bill? Because it just, every time you said that bill.
I'm just a bill.
Yes.
And something.
And I just don't think that the youth of the now know that like
you don't
we
think
do.
So?
Well, I don't know. You're a youth and you sort of know it.
I am not a youth.
Anyway.
But thank you for saying that.
When we were prepping for this, I just kept envisioning that little dancing bill.
The little dancing guy.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I will tell you, though, whether you're an educator or a parent or just a layman of any sort, you're going to get something out of this podcast today.
Cool.
Okay, well, if you don't care, I'll go first.
I don't.
So I'm going to talk about healthcare. If it impacted healthcare, I'm going to try to be comprehensive and dial into it all.
Okay.
If I missed anything, please feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm always looking to grow, have that growth mindset. So much of what happened in this session was related to Medicaid. Yeah. I feel like everything was potentially.
Do you just want me to come back?
Yeah, this will take about 45 minutes. You come back.
Okay, I'll be back.
So even in week one, right, like everything. So at federally, CMS was accepting comment at the beginning of the legislative season for the amendment that would remove the ability for parents, spouses to be paid caregivers. Because remember, I mean, I know you remember, but for the audience, that was something that was provided to Idahoans during the pandemic, with the flexibility to be your child, to be your spouse's personal caregiver and be paid for it. Are there other states that do this? Yes. But we, as Idahoans, are looking to not continue that.
Correct.
Essentially what I'm saying is it's in flux. Please hold for more information. So we saw that at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
But that was not it.
Ladies and gentlemen, hold on tight.
Okay, so there were a lot of Medicaid bills. Like I said, you might not hear yours. You might not hear the one that you were hoping for. But if not, pop off in the comments. So first, we saw House Bill 58, which was a proposed law that would end Idaho's Medicaid expansion program. Ultimately, we sifted through a lot of bills to get to the one that we liked.
Yeah.
So Medicaid expansion, just as a level setter, is what allowed more adults, especially those with low income but without disabilities or children, to get healthcare coverage through Medicaid. And this means that adults who qualified for Medicaid only qualified because of Medicaid expansion. So based on income alone, they wouldn't be eligible otherwise. They would be losing their healthcare coverage. And I want to remind everyone who maybe is like me and potentially blacked out in 2018 that Medicaid expansion was voted for. Honest to God, I don't remember doing this. I don't remember voting for this.
I remember the push. It was a real grassroots effort. I'm older than you. So yeah,
You're not that much older than me. 2018, I had my last kid.
But see, that's where I think that's where you were in the thick of it, right? You had what, 3 kids under 3 at that point?
That's so okay.
Blacking out in 2018 is probably just
how I survived.
Yeah, it was okay.
Uncased.
But yes, I do remember it. It was a huge grassroots effort. It was an initiative that was put on the ballots by Idaho people, I believe.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
I do remember.
I can't remember if it was Prop 1 or Prop 2, but I blacked out. So in case you were like me, Medicaid expansion was voted for by Idahoans in 2018, and it started in 2020. It allowed adults ages 19 to 64 without disabilities, without dependents, to get Medicaid based only on income. Any adult making up to about $20,783 per year or $43,000 for a family of 4. It's a Medicaid expansion. Doesn't directly affect children with disabilities because they're not really in that population outright. It does affect them because the people who support them, the direct support to the children with disabilities, is potentially being affected because the people who are on Medicaid expansion are often those community support workers.
That our direct care workforce, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, as you can imagine, House Bill 58 did not pass. Okay. So we saw House Bill 138, which imposed new conditions for Medicaid expansion. It doesn't outright ban it. It's saying that if just one of these 11 specific conditions aren't met, Medicaid expansion would be repealed. So a lot of what you're going to hear is work or volunteer requirements, but I'll read all of these 11 to you. Please, if you're listening to this for the first time and this is all new information for you, House Bill 138 did not pass. Number 1, keep federal funding at 90%. So if the federal government lowered its reimbursement or its share, Idaho is going to end the program. And the reason that is key, the reason that is crucial is because there's a lot of talk at the federal level about making cuts to Medicaid or amending Medicaid funding. Idaho has a 90-10 match. Federally, they pay 90, Idaho pays 10. If that were to change, Medicaid expansion is repealed. Number 2, require participants to work or volunteer at least 20 hours per week. Unless they are children, seniors, pregnant, caring for a child with a disability in recovery. Number 3, offer private insurance instead of Medicaid for people over the poverty line, but let them choose. Number 4, limit enrollment to 50,000 people or the same number as seniors and people with disabilities currently in Medicaid, whichever is fewer. Number 5, keep errors under 5%. Number 6, stop auto-renewing Medicaid without checking updated info. Number 7, limit coverage to 36 months per lifetime for this group. Number 8, check eligibility every 6 months, not just every year, twice a year. Number 9, allow hospitals to do quick approvals, aka presumptive eligibility for kids and pregnant women, not adults. Number 10, ban using Medicaid funds for certain procedures or services that the state does not support, such as abortion services or gender-affirming care. Number 11, finally, number 11, you've made it. Ban using funds for gender reassignment surgery for adults or treatment. Did not pass. Another bill that did not pass. And you may be thinking to yourself, why are you telling me all of these if they did not pass? And the reason we are putting you through this is because, again,
you're putting me through this again.
Okay. Is because it really helps you understand why what did pass did pass. Yeah. How did we get here? What did we turn down to get to where we are today? House Bill 328 did not pass either. Another Medicaid reform bill dropped earlier proposals that tied changes to Medicaid expansion repeal, offering a slightly gentler alternative. Again, did not pass. And, drumroll please, dun dun dun, or maybe more like dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Depending on which way you.
Yep.
House Bill 345, also known as a Medicaid Reform and Cost Containment Act. This bill, now signed into law, this one was the winner, shifts the state toward managed care. So MCOs, managed care organizations, handing more authority to private insurance companies. This bill is a major change to how Medicaid decisions are made in Idaho. It says that Idaho lawmakers, aka the legislator, must give approval before the state can make changes to its Medicaid program. So previously, in the before times, DHW could make changes to some programs. Obviously, there are some programs that might need CMS approval. Obviously, there are some other hoops, but they did not meet. The legislature always approves their budgets. They always have. They always will. But in the foretime, they did not need the legislature because they are not, through no fault of their own, they are not expected to be as educated as DHW on the Department of Health and Welfare. The Department of Health and Welfare is DHW. They're not as educated as them on some of the services and supports and the why, and they don't have the data, and on and on and on. But now the legislature gets to, okay.
Yeah.
I think you understand what I'm trying to put down here. Previously, the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare could make updates like adding services or changing how Medicaid works more independently. This bill takes away that flexibility, some of it, and puts lawmakers in control of most of it, the big changes. IPUL, Idaho Parents Unlimited, that's us, testified. Also, our executive director was the testifier, testee.
I don't.
Angela Lindig. And she asked for assurances that the disability community would have a seat at the table. And bless Melissa Wintrow, Senator Melissa Wintrow, who said repeatedly that she would involve the disability community. Not that any of the other senators or representatives expressed that outright, but I did get the impression that they all agreed.
I would agree.
And you guys showed up too.
Oh, my word.
There were so many people.
And I think that we saw how testimony has changed since COVID, because we had people all across the state being able to provide testimony remotely, but we were packing those hearing rooms, and we had people providing in-person testimony, written testimony, emailed testimony. You're right. People showed up.
People showed up and they showed out. When you mess with someone's healthcare, people tend to show up and show out.
Yeah.
Another thing that this may impact is some cost sharing, which is a little bit more into the weeds because you can never be charged more than 5% of your income. So it might be on a sliding scale. It's typically, I think, $3.64 for some things. Please stay tuned for more information. But we
don't know how all is shaken down still, kind of.
Exactly.
Okay.
We were there. We testified. We'll continue to monitor how these changes could affect access, cost sharing, and eligibility for our children with disabilities. Federally, like I mentioned as a little teaser about 13 minutes ago, a proposed $800 billion in cuts, I'm laughing, largely expected to impact Medicaid, has raised some alarms. While no specific programs have been made, I want to make that clear. Advocates, including Idaho Parents Unlimited, including Idaho Voices for Children, including Idaho Anti-Trafficking, including the Council on Developmental Disabilities, including, who have I missed here? Everybody was there.
Oh, it was our Centers for Independent Living. Everybody.
Everybody was there on March 20th at the Capitol steps at an event called Protect Medicaid. And I think that some people may have thought that had something to do with House Bill 345, just because they occurred so close together. But I want everyone, I'm setting this rumor, I'm laying it down, I'm putting it to bed. once and for all. That was in regards to the federal $880 billion in cuts. One final note before I shut my mouth and I let Melissa discuss some of the educational pieces. Our director of health and welfare, as if we needed more change, has been nominated to a federal role. Good for him. Everybody loves a promotion.
Yeah.
Good on you, Alex Adams. We do not, as of this recording, today is May the 5th. You should be hearing this on or near, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, the 15th of May. As of right now, I do not know who his replacement would be. But I do know that they could influence how Idaho's services operate moving forward, because Alex Adams made quite a change.
Yeah, he did.
The department became the one department and everything went through him. So there were a lot of changes with Alex Adams. So before I close, I just want to say there's no certainty. I don't have a lot of stability to provide you right now. Hold on tight. Keep your eyes and ears open. And now I'm going to pass it off to Melissa for some education.
Okay, so thank you for that healthcare.
You are so welcome.
So now we're going to switch to schools. While this session was very, very healthcare driven, it also was very heavily educationally driven. We saw school choice, we saw student safety, we saw a lot of funding bills coming through the legislature. Okay, so we're going to kind of break it down. So House Bill 93, that was our tax choice, our Idaho parental tax credit. That passed both chambers, and it was signed into law. That gives up to $5,000 per child, $7,500 for kids with disabilities. So this is going to families who are not enrolled in public or charter schools to be that offset for private tuition, tutoring, or those educational costs. That flew through. It flew through probably because it was really heavily, a push from our current administration from the federal level too.
Yeah.
So next,
can I just add one more thing?
Whatever you want.
Thank you.
It's your podcast. Just kidding.
Is this the one where we even saw people come in from other states to provide testimony? Arizona, right?
Arizona.
So someone from Arizona came to Idaho and provided testimony on how this credit,
how it worked in their state and how they loved it and how it's done just great things. And yes. So
this isn't something Idaho came up with in a dream, or it wasn't like a shower thought. This is something that other states, with or without success, I might add, have done in their states. Okay, correct. Thank you. I just want to be sure.
I believe Idaho is kind of middle of the road when we're in terms of these vouchers, these school choice.
Okay.
I don't know I don't know if we're the 30th state. I don't know where we're at, but I know there are quite a few other states who are going this route.
This isn't our idea.
No, this wasn't our idea. Okay, so we'll move on from that. So then we saw Senate Bill 1096, and that introduced some weighted per student funding. So what that means is that schools get more support for families or for students who have greater need, right? My 15-year-old student costs more to educate than his 11-year-old brother. That's just how it is. English language learners, kids with disabilities, alternate educational setting students, those cost a little bit more.
And this is something we can definitely get behind. Hands down, 100%.
100%.
Schools should get more money for these specific pupils.
100%. Yeah. We know they require more instruction, individualized approaches sometimes that it's more than a typical student requires.
Right.
Absolutely. We are 100% can get behind that. So then we move on to student safety. So we have a few bills that kind of touch and address that. So House Bill 5 set up behavioral threat assessment and management. So is it BTAM? Are we calling it BTAM? Like
I haven't heard it referenced out loud yet. So it could be anything. B to the T to the A to the M.
I don't know if it's probably.
It could be anything.
So those are behavioral threat assessment and management teams. Those teams are their purpose is to identify potential threats. As parents of children with disabilities, we should very much pay close attention to how these teams are operating, especially in the educational setting, so that we ensure fairness for all of our students, legal protections that IDEA gives to our students. Every student has the right to a free and appropriate education, right? So we don't want to have some unintended consequences that would potentially remove some students from that educational setting. This bill did not pass, but what it did is very much set the stage for House Bill 236. So speaking of House Bill 236, let's just talk about that. So House Bill 236 allows schools to deny enrollment or attendance to students with disruptive behavior, with past expulsions, with criminal history. What I want to say is in this testimony, we absolutely saw parent voice matter.
Yeah.
We saw parent voice be able to change the structure and the flow of how this bill was written so that it did not have unintended consequences. There were some sections of this bill that needed to be moved accordingly so that parent voice moved some amendments to this bill so that it had some protective language in it. And this bill passed and was signed by the governor on the 31st of March. So.
And I think that was what was so powerful, is that a lot of times, and I know everyone's testimony is so personal and it's so individualized, but the effect that it has when someone comes with, hey, this is a problem, but here's a potential solution. The way that those committee members, their ears just open and their eyes zoomed in. They're like, oh, okay, so you think that if we just you like this bill, or I mean, you don't like automatically oppose it. You're saying, okay, I hear you, but you got to make this one small change and then it will protect students with disabilities better. Yeah. And once they heard that, they were like, let's do it. Yeah, I'm not against that. So we came to the table in a bipartisan way, which was so great to see.
And that is exactly, it was collaboration at its finest.
Exactly.
Preemptively removed unintended consequences so that we didn't have to come back next session and open this bill up again and say, or do another bill and an amendment to a bill.
We don't want to see this again, right?
We got it before it even was signed into law so that we didn't have to even mess with those unintended consequences.
100%.
So I guess at the end of the day, parents looking at the language and structure of how a bill is written, it made all the difference in this case. So good job, parents who testified and were really the driving forces behind that. So we're proud of you.
Yeah, shout out to you, Laura Walls, Brittany Shipley, and a couple of other people whose names are finally slipping my brain after I had them memorized for this.
But good job, ladies. You made it.
You did the work.
All right. So let's go on to House Bill 75. That really aimed at creating a new funding system to help public districts that needed desperate repairs, remodeling to their school facilities, but only if they could prove that they really, really needed that help. This was kind of a state-level emergency fund for schools that have those serious facility problems, however, did not pass. And I think we've all been to a school where we're like, oh my word.
They could use some support.
They could use... Right? And
asbestos in the walls, mold, lead paint.
And this is kind of this was one of those bills that if it would pass, it's that emergency level when the bonds and levies don't work, when we can't get the community support there, but we are in a dire situation.
Right.
Yeah. Moving on. Senate Bill 1032, which states that by December 31st of 2025, every Idaho public school must create a clear policy about how students can use phones and devices during the school day on school property. So this Senate bill required that schools or districts limit device use during class time and school hours.
Nobody's against that.
Nope. And focus on reducing distractions in the learning environment. So think, texting during class, checking your Insta, any of those. That
snapping, your Snapchat.
Yeah, right? That's not a bad thing.
No, nobody's against that.
And I can tell you, my senior son's school district implemented this policy this year. I don't know if it was that or if he just finally clicked, but his effort and his grades have made a complete turnaround. And I don't know if it's just that, but it couldn't have hurt anything.
Yeah, it obviously lended a helping hand, right?
Yes. So schools were not required to ban cell phones completely. They could if they chose to. Some districts did take that upon themselves. Schools, we wouldn't be the Parent Training and Information Center if we didn't say schools are allowed to include exceptions, right, into their policies, like students with IEPs or potentially 504s. There are some students who need access to devices. If students have type 1 diabetes and have a Dexcom, they need their device for that reading purposes.
And we saw that, right?
We did. We have several students who use phones as a communication device, and those needed to be allowed into, written into IEPs, written into 504s, so that they kind of were allowed to not skirt the policy, but they were allowed approved devices within this.
So that they could access their free and appropriate public education.
Exactly. So not everything passed. We did see House Bill 291, which we really, really wanted to pass.
Is that the high needs fund?
That is our high needs
Oh my gosh.
fund.
This just hurts me even. It literally brings me physical pain to talk about this.
I know, because these are our students.
And I will also say, after having made that comment, that this was very highly debated. Like the legislature really put the time in for this.
They did, and we came so close. It failed by just one vote. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
However, I guess it tells us that we are so close and we just need more education, because I really think that that's what it came down to.
I would agree.
So many of the legislators are saying, well, we're giving you money. We've done this. And it's just explaining and educating exactly who this fund would be
beneficial for, because that's what it was, right? If you had a student who...
It really is truly for those smaller, more rural districts that have potentially a student that is expensive. I mean, for example, if you had a student that was maybe blind and needed all of their materials to be accessible in Braille, that costs the district a lot of money. Or if you had a student that requires one-to-one support or maybe skilled nursing, if they're a very medically fragile student. So for that student to be able to access their free and appropriate education, it costs a lot to be able to send them to school. And you can see where in a rural district that would potentially bankrupt them. And so that's what this high cost fund was, to proportionately help out some districts that may have students that are higher cost than others.
High cost, high need.
High cost, high need.
And like you said, though, I think it really was education, because there was one point where I believe it was Debbie Critchfield, the superintendent of public instruction for Idaho, who was trying to just really paint the picture of what a student like this might look like and what they might need, kind of like you just did. And the representative, I cannot remember who it is now. I do know it was a gentleman who said that a student can't really cost $100,000 a year. And, Debbie Critchfield was like, absolutely a student. Mm-hmm. And he was flabbergasted.
His flabbers were gasted.
His jaw was on the floor. He could. So I think you're right. I think it's just kind of letting people know that these children, they deserve an education. And yes, they are more expensive.
And it's not every student.
Correct.
Right? These are very one-off scenarios. And that's why this was, I believe it was a $3 million ask to just create a fund. And obviously districts were going to have to show that need. It wasn't going to just be everybody got $20 as it was going to have to be applied for and received based on the need of the district.
And it's not a child's fault for being born in Priest River versus being born in Boise.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's our job to support every child in Idaho, regardless of where.
Yeah, so I guess this one gives me a little bit of hope that next year, with a little bit more education, hopefully this is one that we're close to moving.
That's such a good point. That's such a... Okay.
I'm trying to be positive.
Yes. I think it's warranted too, because we were so close.
Yeah. Okay. I have one more thing. Federally, you talked about a federal sprinkle, right?
So, a little rain.
Federally, that brings us to a federal executive order that, maybe you might have seen in the headlines, the ending to the radical indoctrination of K through 12 schools. So that aims to prevent schools from teaching children to view themselves as victims or oppressors, or to question gender identity without involving their parents. And so while in some interpretations vary, it really underscores how education is, again, at the front of so many
and people have so many thoughts,
right?
So many thoughts, education,
so many opinions.
And I think that that's what the federal level is trying to do. They're trying to say, hey, everyone has a lot of feelings about education. Let's send it back to the states.
Yeah.
Let's let the states be in control.
Absolutely.
And I think that a lot of people also don't conceptualize the fact that it was always kind of at the states. The federal was just kind of saying, make sure that Title I is followed. Make sure that 504 is implemented. Make sure that the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is being followed. They were more kind of a overseer, like a compliance officer.
For sure. And I, in a lot of the conversations that we've had this legislative season, I think that is what has surprised people the most. Is when you talk about, sending it back to the states, people are kind of scared and nervous. But it sort of has already happened that way. It's already kind of
and it's been that way for a very long time, and I can attest to that. And I know that a lot of people are going to relate to this story. But I spent some time in Washington D.C., which you might know is across the country. I spent 3 years there. And then I moved back here. And when I moved back here, I, as a junior, had to be in some freshman classes because they're required in Idaho and they were not required in Maryland.
Because Idaho sets.
Because it's Idaho standards. So, I mean, it's something that's always kind of been that way. But if you're not moving states or in that life, you're not thinking about all those things.
So stick a fork in it. We're done. That's me. Education.
It's just education. No biggie.
It's just education.
No biggie.
So we did healthcare. We did education.
There's just a few. You wish. You wish. There's just a few more things I want to bring to everyone's attention. Another huge win is House Bill 26, which updated Idaho's ABLE account program. So this allows us as a state to partner to cut costs. So in the before times, you would have to get like a Chase account or something like that to get an ABLE account. It had to be like a federal, you tell me more about that. You know more.
Yeah, Idaho didn't have any recognized banking institutions. So you had to kind of go outside of the state. Idaho wasn't recognizing them. Our account my son's ABLE account is through Chase.
It just makes it easier to access.
Yeah.
It is easier to access now, which is a huge win.
And I don't know, and maybe I need to find this out. Like, are our credit unions now capable? Is this?
I think so.
Okay, I think so too.
I think so, but I'm not.
I need the State Independent Living Council is.
Yeah, your Link, your DAC, your Life.
Yep, those are our people.
Sounds like a whole bunch of hashtags.
Yeah.
And also, we celebrated annually, like we always do, Fred Rigger's Disability Awareness Day on February 5th. It's just an incredible chance every year for families to speak directly with lawmakers, for families to talk to Link, to talk to Life, to talk to DAC, to talk to Disability Rights Idaho. All of us are there.
I always love hearing Fred's daughter speak too.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And every year she has a new story about Fred and how he just came to the Capitol and thought, I'm doing this. I am now a person with a disability and I have the time and the space and I'm going to talk to my legislators and I'm going to tell them what it's like.
And the DD Council is always, they're right there.
Sorry.
It was good this year. It was really good this year. So what do you take away from the 2025 season? What do you take away from the session? Let me tell you. I'm gonna make it sound like a question, but it's really just a way for me to just interject this statement right here.
Okay.
And then I want to know. What do you take away? Medicaid, changing. Education, evolving. Parent voice, making a difference. Do not underestimate. Don't underestimate yourself.
Yeah. Exactly.
Sometimes it feels really defeating when you watch 100 people say, please vote no on this, and they vote yes on it. Sometimes it's defeating.
I guess my takeaway is there are a lot more people out there. The Medicaid rally on the steps, the Fred Riggers Day, people are coming out, and exactly what you said. Parent voice is making a difference. Testimony is making a difference. Voices are making a difference, and seeing people show up. That's what I'm going to take away from this session. Is I think we had more people realizing the value of their voice.
Never stop sharing your power of your personal story.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, everyone out there, for listening in. And know that if you are in Idaho or planning on moving to Idaho and have questions on systems or services for children with disabilities, please consider reaching out to us on our website at IPUL Idaho. That's IPUL Idaho.org, or by calling us at 208-342-5884. Be sure to tune in next time. Until then, this has been Unlimited Parenting.
Thanks for listening.